Hey everyone, Ryan Nordahl here, Epic Whitetail Habitat LLC. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to my channel, or you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Turn on that bell notification. That way every time I upload a new video, you get that notification right away. And hey, any of the products or tools you see me using in these videos, I'll always leave links in the description below, so you'll want to check that out. But today, I want to talk about my top 6 hinge cutting fails that I see when I'm out on properties, what I see on social media, on YouTube, guys doing that just, it makes me cringe. There's one that's, I think it's just bad, don't do it. You know, I'll always recommend, if you're on the fence or hesitant about running a saw and doing a hinge cut, because yes, hinge cutting is dangerous. I can't emphasize that enough. It cannot be emphasized enough. But it's a great tool to have in your toolbox in the right situations. But it's going to lead me to my top six failures that I see guys that are attempting hinge cutting, that they perform more often than not. And a lot of them kind of go hand in hand. Like number 6 and number 1, they go hand in hand pretty well. But angle cuts, cutting too far, cutting too high. I see a lot of that all the time. Guys, when it comes to hinge cutting, again, like I said, it can be very dangerous. But how high am I hinge cutting? I'm cutting from about the middle of my shin up to maximum about my sternum. I'm 6'2". I want those new shoots that are going to come off of where I cut to come out at deer height. Now, what do you do once those new shoots, after a couple years, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, get up out of a deer's reach? Well, you can go back in and hinge cut. You know, that goes back to probably my number 6 as well. I should have said number 5 and number 1 go hand in hand. But angle cuts, very dangerous. You're cutting through a lot more wood, using a lot more fuel and energy with your chainsaw or handsaw, what have you, to take that much more wood at an angle. And I know why people do that. They do an angle cut because they think it's going to help the tree fall. Guys, even when you're face cutting a tree to completely fell it, you do not want to be taking angled back cut. It's the same with hinge cutting. You don't know what that tree is going to do. But I see guys, and I know why they do it. They cut it at an angle because they think it's going to help fall that tree. They cut too far. They don't leave enough of the cambium layer connected. You only want to go, and by the way, I'm only doing hinge cuts on trees up to a maximum of 6 inches in diameter. Yeah, you'll see me in some of my videos that I've taken some larger trees, but that all depends on the tree as well. Hickories, I'm not afraid to go a little bit larger. You know, I've taken some 12-inch hickories and I've successfully hinge cut them. White oak, I know a lot of you are going to frown on me hinge cutting white oak, but there's a time and a place to cut white oak. Not all white oaks are going to be that great acorn producing oak tree that we all want to see on our properties. Red oak, I think there's a proper time of year that you could get away with hinge cutting a red oak, but it's not going to hinge cut that well. But I know, again, a lot of you guys are frowning upon that, hinge cutting any type of oak. Guys, like I said, there's a time and a place. You got to understand trees and everything, but I'm going off on a tangent there. Let's stick back to the topic. Again, it leads me to cutting too large of trees. You're better off to take your face cut and fell the larger trees. You got to get those larger trees out of the way. And that can go hand in hand with number 3, not opening up enough canopy. I see a lot of hinge cutting failure where they went in, you know, whether it is a confidence thing, that they're just not confident taking larger trees out or whatnot, so they're just sticking to the smaller trees. They're not opening up enough canopy, and eventually the entire hinge cut fails and you're left with complete mess. I know hinge cutting can look disgusting, but we're not doing it from an aesthetic standpoint. We're doing it from a deer standpoint. We're instantly putting browse at deer level. Yeah, there's the hack and squirt method. There's girdling and treating that girdle around a larger tree. You know, eventually the tree dies, but then what happens when it falls? It can just fall any random place it wants. When we're doing a complete face cut of these larger trees, when we're hinge cutting, we're laying these trees in a specific location, not fighting tree lean. You do not want to fight tree lean. Now, with smaller trees and a little bit of help from a habitat hook, from our wedges, from another person running the habitat hook, we can guide these smaller trees, push these smaller trees in a position that we want them to fall. It's very easy to take a small tree, 2 to 3 inches in diameter, and push it against the angle that it's leaning. It is. I've done enough of it, guys. I don't need any negative feedback on that, any retaliation feedback on that. If you haven't tried it, you don't know. You don't have the experience. Location is everything. I see a lot of guys, you have your food plot, your destination food plot, what have you. They're putting their hinge cuts 150, 200 yards back. You got to think about where those does want to bed. Yes, they want to bed as close to that food plot as possible, and if you're leaving your property alone, you're not overpressuring the property during hunting season, of course those does and fawns will still lay close to that food source in a wide open, you know, no understory vegetation whatsoever, as long as those deer aren't pressured. But in high pressure situations like we here on this property and everything, we want to give them security and relate those deer as close to the food sources as possible, those doe and fawn family groups, and it brings the bucks that much closer too. Yes, the bucks are going to be further away from the plot, but it positions those deer, those bucks, closer to proximity to the food source. If we're making this hinge cut bedding area 150, 200 yards, 300 yards, whatever, back in the woods, and there's no cover next to the food plot in a high pressure situation like the state of Wisconsin is, now when we're hunting these food plots, hunting the edges, hunting those transition areas between food sources and bedding area, those deer have to come a lot further. You're going to wait a lot longer, perhaps till dark. Perhaps that deer, that mature buck that you're after, isn't going to show up until after dark. Location is everything. They've got to be close. I've seen it too many times where their location, again, like I said, is off the food source, over 100, 150 yards off the food source. I like, in the right situation, I like to have my bedding areas set up as close to the food source as possible so those does and fawns can relate, and then stacking the bucks in behind them. But again, not having the proper tools, having wedges, you know, having a good sharp chainsaw all the time, even a good sharp handsaw. I do a lot of handsaw cutting. You know, I'm training my little boy to be out there to do some hinge cutting on small trees. I mean, we're talking saplings, nothing bigger than an inch in diameter for a little kid like that, with his Heumann handsaw habitat hook. One of the best tools I have for pulling trees into position, for pushing trees into position, hey, simply for taking pressure off of the chainsaw if I do happen to get hung up, you know, where the tree, I thought it was going to lean one way, and it, you know, it goes, whether I'm face cutting too, I thought it was going to fall one way because of the tree lean that I saw. You know, it's all perspective. The number one other thing that I see, you have to look up. Very dangerous out there. You can have widowmakers. You have to be looking up at all the time. You know, I've had clients come up to me, man, you're wasting a lot of time. Hey, I have to look up. I have to know which way this tree is going to fall. It takes time. It takes time to do a good job to do it properly, whether I'm face cutting or hinge cutting. I'm always looking up, what way is this tree going to lean? But every once in a while, I saw a pinch. I have to be able to get it out. It's good to have this habitat hook. You know, if I fail to get a wedge in behind, I can get a little leverage on it. This one's extendable. I can extend it out. I would do it here. I got to step off. You know, it extends out. Great tool to have. Guys fail to have the proper toolage. That's why they're taking their angle cuts. That's why they're cutting too far. That's why at the end of the day, they eventually have a mess 2 or 3 years down the road because everything is dead. They wasted all that effort trying to hinge cut, and it failed on them because they didn't have the proper toolage. Again, leads me into number 6, failure to maintain. I think a lot of guys shy away from hinge cutting. They've tried it once, you know, and there's a lot of other habitat managers out there in the YouTube world that despise hinge cutting. You know, a lot of them are on the right track with the danger aspect. But if you cut a tree in any way, shape, or form, there's always that danger. If you hack and squirt or girdle a tree, and the right wind comes up 2, 3, 4 years down the road, however long it took for that tree to eventually die and rot before it tips over, you could be walking in the woods on a good, steady, windy day. The days I like to hunt are good, windy days. You might want to take that into consideration. I'm not saying hurricane or tornado effect winds by any means there, but on a good steady wind and that tree falls over, you can get killed by that. You could slip on a banana peel in the morning getting out of bed. Not suggesting you go out and try hinge cutting or anything like that. Leave it to the professionals such as myself. But just going back, failure to maintain. Opening up so deer can move freely throughout those hinge cut bedding areas as well. You know, because yeah, eventually they will get too thick with new vegetation, with new stump sproutage. It comes off of the, you know, where you cut the tree, all that new regeneration. As we're opening up the canopy, new hardwood that starts to grow from the ground, forbs, whatever, it can get too thick. Brambles, briars, you have to go in and maintain them. You have to go in and cut openings through so the deer can move freely through, no dead ends. Absolutely no dead ends. But that way, then too, we can create those travel corridors within the hinge cut bedding areas to specific stand locations, setting the trap. And when that buck comes around that hinge cut bedding area on the downwind side of it, scent checking, we've got a stand location that plays the wind, and it's a slam dunk. Hinge cutting is a great tool in the toolbox, but these are some of the failures that I see that you want to watch out. Those high hinge cuts, very, very dangerous. There's absolutely no need to be cutting with a chainsaw at head level or higher. Very dangerous, and I see it so many times. There's no need for that high canopy. Absolutely not. Now, yes, you'll see in some of my photos and video that I share of my own, yes, you'll see a tree that's up that far, up above my head. I can walk under it. But I'll guarantee 99% of the time that tree was still cut anywhere from my shin up to my sternum. Again, I'm 6'2". So about 5 foot is as high as I ever want to go. But that's very rare. And yes, when it bends over, eventually that tree is up in the air, depending on the type of tree. I'll get into my favorite trees to hinge cut in another video. I'm going to leave it at that. But this is what I wanted to share with you today. My top 6 hinge cutting failures. I hope you found it helpful, educational. Give it a like, give it a share. Leave a comment down below. I don't really care if it's a negative comment toward hinge cutting. I don't really care. There's no need for me to justify myself by replying why I like hinge cutting and why you probably don't. But you can leave that negative comment. Don't expect me to reply to it. But if I can be of service to people that think hinge cutting is a tool that they could use on their property, you know, I'm always here. I just got back at the beginning of February from a big hinge cutting project that I was hired to do down in Kentucky. I had a lot of fun down there, working with a great habitat manager, friend of mine from the Lexington area, Mature Whitetail Strategies, Dr. Sean Twitt. And again, Sean, if you're watching this video, thanks for having me down. Glad to be part of your team. Very happy to be part of your team. And guys, thanks for watching my videos. I really appreciate you guys. I know this video got a little long-winded, as a lot of my videos do, get sidetracked, off topic, whatever. But that's just me. That's just me going off on tangents, telling stories, and that's part of who I am. I'm not going to change who I am to justify what you're looking for in these videos. If you don't like it, move on to the next video of what you're looking for. But these are my top fails, what I see out there on a daily basis when I'm out consulting, doing hinge cut project implementations of my own for my clients and whatnot. You know, I've traveled all over the country doing hinge cutting. I've been all the way out to Vermont, Michigan, Minnesota, here in Wisconsin, of course, Illinois. I thoroughly enjoy Kentucky, and I absolutely love running a chainsaw, whether I'm cutting firewood, hinge cutting, just felling trees, doing a little bit of logging. I'm not a logger by any means, but I love helping out where I can, and I want you guys to be safe out there. Again, if you're hesitant about it one bit and you think it's a tool that would work on your property, give a professional such as myself a call, shoot us an email, whatnot. All that information is on our website. I'll leave a link to our website in the description below like I always do, so check that out. So guys, with that, if you're new to my channel, you haven't already, really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. Turn on that bell notification. Again, any of the products or tools you've seen me using in these videos, you can always find links in the description below. God bless you all. Thanks for watching. Keep living the dream.